welcome to the introductory topic for materials and methods. So it's not, I guess, essentially it's not about materials and methods, but it's about getting that understanding, that initial understanding of the aspects surrounding the project, the aspects that come before the project, be that title, ownership details, any encumbrances, and all the legislation that guides our building process. So this is the underlying information. So we've got, well, typically our residential buildings are Class 1 buildings. That is broken up into two different sections. So Class 1A, a single dwelling being a detached house or one or more attached dwellings, each being separated by a firewall, including a row house, terrace house, townhouse, villa, or unit. And in the second section of Class 1, we have small boarding houses. So boarding houses with a floor area not exceeding 300 square metres. So 300 square metres, if we think about your average modern house built today, is around that 200 square metre mark. We're talking average. We've got, certainly we have it much larger and significantly smaller, but around that 200 square metre, 300 square metres as a boarding house is not very large, and which no more than 12 persons would ordinarily reside. The reason that we break that, or that there's that cap on boarding houses of that size, is because with smaller boarding houses, the occupants are much more likely to be very familiar with that building and more familiar with other occupants, and it's easier for any building management to know who is in the building and who is not in the building. So in regards to safety, access and egress, in the event of fire, that sort of thing, that differs from our larger forms of accommodation. Also, within the National Construction Code and Volume 2, so there's diploma students, or the diploma students of this course are concerned with Class 1 and Class 10 buildings, but then the Certificate 4 students within this, the materials and methods, will be working on Class 1, then Class 2, and then Class 5 and 6 buildings. But for residential, within the National Construction Code, we have Volume 2, which relates to only Class 1 and Class 10 buildings, and then Volume 1 of the National Construction Code, which relates to our other classes of buildings, so Class 2 to 9. So our Class 1 residential houses, flats, apartments, renovations, extensions, etc., in a residential context, and then our Class 2, which is multi-residential, through to shops, offices, restaurants, so for Class 5 and 6, and then Class 7 industrial, factories, warehouses and whatnot. So here's a diagrammatic view of various different classes as they exist within the National Construction Code. So the brief history about the National Construction Code, that was born out of the BCA, I don't remember what BCA stands for now. So the BCA, the Building Code of Australia, and then within that Building Code, well, supplementary to that Building Code of Australia, we had state, like we had the South Australian Housing Code. The South Australian Housing Code has now been abolished, largely abolished, and many of those factors drawn into a national construction code. So a construction code which applies nationally. However, I think we have a copy of the National Construction Code up here at the moment. One thing I would like to point out about the National Construction Code in regards to that is, yes, it is the National Construction Code, but we still have this area here called Appendix A additions, whereby each state has its own specific set of state-specific considerations. So within South Australia we have water efficiency considerations, we have wet area considerations. It's great, it's working for me now, it's good. Access for people with disability, etc. So please make yourself aware of those, and then if ever you're called upon to do work in other states or move to other states for doing work whereby you have to refer to the National Construction Code, be aware that other states have their own aspects as well. So these are aspects which have not been nationalised in that sense. So, wrong page. So that is the National Construction Code, formerly known as the Building Code of Australia. We have other government requirements. So one major government requirement would be Minister's specifications in regards to certain aspects, and an important one for us is the Minister's Specification 78 in regards to bushfire, which primarily details out access for emergency services vehicles like the CFS and on-site water storage and any other requirements for firefighting infrastructure. We also have associated with each parcel of land things that are called encumbrances. Now, an encumbrance is any measure that essentially encumbers the use of the land. So something that stops you from doing something else. A very typical encumbrance is what's known as a developer's encumbrance. So let's say you've got a major developer like Delta that purchased a large what's called a greenfield site, so a site that hasn't been built upon before, so make that distinction. Greenfield sites that haven't been built upon before, brownfield sites, infill of urban areas. But let's say they purchase a large paddock on the edge of the metropolitan area and carve that up. Typically what they will be interested in as the developer is a cohesive residential development, so where there's very similar, how do I say, design language, acceptance of design styles happening within that development. And so to maintain that, they will impose encumbrances, which may be a statement on the title saying that within 12 months purchase of this, well, they'll have that encumbrance listed on there, and then there'll be a separate document appended to that title, stating things such as within the first year of building, occupants are to establish gardens to the front area of the house. Materials for the house are limited to colour for the roof or tiles, brick veneer or render for walls, etc. So these developers' encumbrances restrict the materials and also some of the building methods that can be employed in those subdivisions to give a cohesive appearance to those buildings. Beyond that, other encumbrances can be things like caveats, which is a legal encumbrance, and that's so things like caveats, they're lodged upon a title for non-payment of various different aspects. Let's say I'm a builder, I do some work on a property, and the owner of that property doesn't want to pay. I can then lodge through the courts, through a court order, lodge a caveat on that property. So that property can't be sold or further developed without the developing of that caveat. Other encumbrances can be things such as easements, and easements can be shown. So we have our certificates of title, and I've got I had a certificate of title sitting there in OneNote to show, but let's bring, got example certificate of title here. So our certificates of title will have our volume and folio reference. Beneath that we'll have our parent title. So this is the certificate of title that that previously covered a portion or some of that land. So typically you get a new certificate of title produced when an older certificate or when an older parcel of land has been subdivided. This certificate of title, the ownership structure of this piece of land is in fee simple, so that means it is that it is or is essentially that it is owned. Other ownership structures can be things such as the leasehold, whereby where the Crown retains ownership of that land, but enables occupation of that land via a lease, and those leases might be nominal rates paid, such as a peppercorn lease, so one peppercorn per year in consideration for the use of that land. So these leases exist typically for large grazing properties like stations and whatnot, where the Crown retains the ownership of that land, or for places like river shacks and things like that. Following that, we have description of land. So we've got this one is section 303. So a section is a very large parcel of land. Typically, within a residential setting, we'll be dealing with allotments. So allotments within either deposit plans or filed plans, and those deposit plans and filed plans can be within sections. So this is a large parcel of land, and this one is within the 100 of Onkaparinga. And the 100 is an area, a larger area once again. On this title, there are no easements shown, and we'll quickly flick through to the second page of the title, which includes our survey plan image. I'll scale that out just a little bit so we can see that survey plan image. And on that, so of course we can see this is a particularly clean title, no easements, no rights of way, etc. shown on that parcel. Just quickly shrink that down, and while we're on the discussion of easements, this is, I guess, essentially the antithesis of that last portion of land. This is a property, or a survey drawing which I came aware of recently, that involves a whole series of easements on it, and easements associated with this parcel. So this is the parcel we're interested in here for the purposes of this exercise. So we've got allotment number 20, and we are within deposit plan 92494. So allotment 20, deposit plan 92494. To access that allotment 20, that is via an easement for a right of way. So we have easement marked D, which is a right of way. We have that showing. I'm not sure if I grabbed all of the information related to all of the easements with this one, but yeah, we've got that's deposit plan. So yeah, anyhow, associated with this one, we've got an easement over this adjoining parcel of land. So we have this adjoining parcel of land here, an easement over that adjoining parcel of land. On our subject parcel of land, we have this easement, easement C of X, which, as it turns out, is water supply first. But then we also have this easement which appears to be for electricity transmission lines across the property there. So we have a significant number of easements on the subject property, but easements associated with that property as well, and then in various different aspects as well on that. So that's just a quick overview of easements as being part of an encumbrance. We also have zoning requirements. So Planning Act 1993 enables our various different local governments, so our local councils, to impose zoning on properties. And what that zoning dictates is what can be built upon that, or what is compliant to be built upon that property. There is always still the the ability to apply for non-compliant development, but the nature of that is that it is a far simpler, more streamlined approach to have compliant, to go down the compliant route of development, so development which complies to the zoning requirements of the council. Also, we have another possible imposition on what can be done with properties, heritage considerations. So our heritage considerations are broken into two main categories: local heritage listing and state heritage listing. Both have their own requirements. As a rule of thumb, your local heritage listing is not as strict as your state heritage listings, but it can be either way. Also, as mentioned before, all construction needs to be in accordance with the National Construction Code, and then within which, and the National Construction Code within that document refers to all of the Australian standards. So we have our Australian standards which dictate how we dictate particulars about material or approach to construction, and the BCA as a broader document references those Australian standards. We'll breeze through this, that's the different title. This is a bit about the Development Act. So that Development Act of 1993, which enables councils to impose their zoning, has various different issues covered with, or aspects covered within it. So it addresses heritage issues and how that should be dealt with, social issues, economic issues, and environmental. So that's our Development Act enables the consideration of those elements. But the formation of our development necessity looks at these particular things. Also a note on that, the Development Act of 1993 is also slated to be superseded as well. There's the passing of the Development Act 2016, and that is slated to be enacted, at least in part, mid-year 2020. So that, and with the assessment by councils of all these issues, so heritage issues, social issues, economic issues, environmental, that goes into the formulation of the zoning. Now zoning in a nutshell, or in a simplistic form, can be broken into residential, industrial, semi-industrial, and rural. Each of these then broken down into further categories. The National Construction Code, formerly known as the BCA, is concerned with aspects of the building. So to make that the construction legal, covering areas such as structural sufficiency, fire, health and amenity, access and egress, and energy efficiency. Energy efficiency is a newer inclusion into our building codes, so the National Construction Code, and that relates to the design, ensuring buildings meet a base level of design to ensure that those buildings are comfortable without too much input of energy to drive air conditioning systems, heating and cooling, etc. In terms of access and egress, the National Construction Code deals with disabled access and how that should be designed for disabled access to buildings, or to the design of toilets, etc. And things like health and amenities. So what is how do we design and build buildings in a way that is conducive to the health of the occupants, such as light and ventilation, things like that. So the National Construction Code reference the Australian standards. it represents minimum requirements necessary to ensure that materials or workmanship do as intended. Some various categories of standards, so we've got dimensional standards, test methods, terms and symbols, codes of practice, contracts, and a popular, well, an Australian standard which you will have to learn very, very well for the drafting course is the Timber Framing Code. This is an important Australian standard within design and construction. So we might be concerned with dimensional standards. So say if we're designing staircases, what rise and run of stairs, height of balustrades, width of openings in those balustrades, etc. Test methods, so how certain materials are tested. So one example would be aluminium sandwich panel cladding. How do we test that to ensure that it meets the fire resistance that's required for building materials? Terms and symbols. So in regards to drafting, how do we do call out details, etc. And so on. So councils will require that you apply for approval for various different activities. So under the Development Act, it's defined that you have to gain approval for things such as new construction, so the entire construction of a new dwelling, or addition, demolition or removal of a building. So we need to have council approval for the demolition and removal of a building. Any excavation or filling of land incidental to construction or demolition. Any structural alterations of a building. And to enable councils to ensure that all aspects of activities relating to construction are covered, there is also this broader sweeping statement saying any other prescribed activities. So that enables councils to include specific things such as the erection of signage or paving of areas or so. So there'll be some things specific to certain areas in certain councils. When we lodge an application with council for approval, that approval consists of, first of all, planning consent. So we need to get consent from council in regards to that planning, and then we need to get consent in regards to the building rules. So whether our building meets the rules and the legislation as set out in the National Construction Code and the Australian standards. Planning consent is assessed against the development plan. So we had you could see that here for, well, what is that? That Playford Council, the development plan for Playford Council. So that sets out what the council require in their overall council objectives, but then also in their specific zoning requirements. So our planning consent is assessed against that document, the relevant zone within that document. Our building rules consent is assessed against the National Construction Code and the associated Australian standards for each aspect of that construction. So I suggest you familiarise yourself and start familiarising yourself with all of the Australian standards that are associated with building. I'd start by doing a Google search. Australian standards, building Australia, and then seeing what turns up. You'll see a whole host of the Australian standards turn up there. But then as we go through this course, you'll be introduced to other further Australian standards. Also, as I'm not sure I mentioned it earlier, so I'll mention it again. Within the TAFE, we have access to the online library. So go to the TAFE website here, services, libraries, and we have online databases. So I'll need to log in to do that. See if I can remember. Actually, I won't. Yes, I can log in if you want to see my So that's us logged into the online databases. And we can click on this, the online databases. This is your location for access to all Australian standards. So here, click here to enter the SAI Global website, and there we can choose any Australian standard we want. So we do a quick search. So AS440 installation of nail plated timber roof trusses, for example. We might 1684, important one. It's taking a little while as the internet is a little bit slow up. So here we have Australian Standard 1684. Please be aware that not always the most recent version pops up at the top here. So we have 1999, that is available but superseded. When we look for this and when we see this, look further for example here the 2010, the current version of that Australian Standard. So we can click on that, or we can go to View Document. It's taking takes a little while. Actually, let's go. Let's just quickly open document so we can have a look at that Australian Standard. Now, this is a fairly large, lengthy standard. Not all standards consist of 7 pages, but that is the timber framing standard. Now, we won't be going through that one tonight, so I'll shrink this back down and we'll find our slides where we left off. So that's how we go accessing the Australian standards. Or another thing, while we're here, we have limited access to SAI Global. So when we are done, please close out of it. Look for the library open. So when we're done with the Australian standards, please close out of them. When we are applying for planning and development approval, we will be required to submit various forms of documentation. This documentation can exist in the form of plans, so various different site plan, floor plans, etc., elevations. Well, elevations are plans, they're drawings, so a set of drawings. Also specifications. So that's all the details that are included about the building that we don't want to crowd the plans with. So things like paint colours and bench tops and things like that. We'll also need to have an engineered report, bore logs, structural calculations, and footing plans, etc. Bore logs are also important for assessing the soil for on-site wastewater systems as well. So for any design that's outside of the metropolitan area or outside sewer mains, you'll have to have an on-site wastewater system, and you'll have to have the soil assessed for the design of that system as well. So bore logs, they are reports that are produced on soil samples, and those soil samples they're taken by pushing a large steel tube down into ground, approximately 4 metres, and extracting a column of earth, and that column of earth is then laid out and assessed by the engineer to assess the various different aspects of that soil in relation to plasticity and its reactiveness in regards to taking up moisture and expanding the moisture. Also, you'll have to nominate a builder, and that builder will have to have indemnity insurance. So that's indemnity insurance typically for any builds over $12,000. However, that may differ between councils, so be aware of that. Also, if you're going for building approval, you need to pay the CITB levy, and also have to complete the application forms. course, with that, following that, you'll also have to pay the council fees. So, as an example of some of the documentation required, so this is a site plan that shows the layout of the building on the site with all associated features. So we have things such as allotment boundary, any easements which we saw in that title earlier to ensure that the building doesn't encroach upon an easement, any adjoining features, location of works and other features, inverts, water table, bench levels, finished floor level for the building, drainage services. So where our water from the roof is that going to water tanks, is it going to the street water table, etc. Do we have any septic tanks on site? Do we have rainwater tanks on site? Any significant trees, etc., etc. Now that might be 1:500 or 1:200. Also, what is required is a floor plan, typically a scale of 1:100. However, a very small building may be in the scale of 1:50. Also, elevations typically follow the same scale as our floor plan. We may be required to produce sections and construction details, so that's what we have shown down here. So that's a section through the building, so we're having a look, essentially cutting through the walls and looking at the components. That can be particularly good for showing construction details that can't be shown in planning form. Footing report and soil report, so we'll need the footing design done by the engineer, and then the soil report and the bore logs also produced by the engineer, and possibly any engineering calculations for structural aspects such as lintels, columns, beams. The specification will provide detailed information of material and workmanship used in the project and any other information not shown on the drawings. We'll also have to include information on so timber design information, so wall frame, roof frame, floor frame, wind speed calculations. That can be gathered from the wind speed map or also from SA Map Viewer, as I showed you before. However, there are certainly areas that are not classified and they will need individual assessment. We won't go into that individual assessment on that today, but that is assessed in accordance with an Australian standard. And those assessments for the wind speed, as shown on SA Housing Code Map or SA Map Viewer, are coming up N1, N2, N3. Off the top of my head, we've got that's 28 metres per second. N2 is 33 metres per second. So N2 is 33 metres per second, and N3 is 42 metres per second winds. So all the tie downs and calculations, all the tie down calculations and bracing have to be designed in accordance with that wind speed, because the wind acting on building acts in both racking forces and uplift. The bracing resists the racking forces, the pushing on the side of the building and the suction on the leeward side of the building, and the tie downs help anchor that building down into the ground to ensure that the elements don't get ripped off in strong winds. And councils may require other information specific to that particular particular development. To supply this information, you need to supply 3 copies of each document required. Then 2 of those copies are retained by the council. Then one of the copies is stamped and returned to the owner. So that way, owners can't just go modifying copies and saying, "Oh, this is the one that I had." That ensures that the set of plans and the documentation that you have is exactly what the council has. To assist in this process, or in the building rules consent process, we can employ people known as private certifiers. They can step in and do the building rules consent work on behalf of the council. So they assess the development against the building rules, and we have that fact sheet on Learn in regards to what private certifiers are. So they, same function performed by council, but they do building rules consent only. The reason you would employ a building a private certifier is to fast track the process and also make it simpler for you. So if you submit something to council, it may sit there for 4 weeks or so for consideration, and in the advent that they find something that doesn't meet code, it'll be sent back to you, and they might provide good information as to what needs rectification, or the information that comes back might be fairly poor. You have to make these changes and resubmit, and then it might sit there for a long time. Whereas if we go through a private certifier for the building rules consent, they are able to phone us up or email us and say, look, these particular aspects need attention. Can you change those? Resubmit to me, and the process happens much quicker because they are working for you. And so typically your minimum rates for private certifiers is going to be around the $500 mark. However, some councils send their work off to private certifiers anyhow, and if you go through a private certifier for your certification, you get a discount in the fees for the council. So some of that cost of the private certifier is also offset by the savings you make through the council application as well by doing that. So they provide provisional building rules consent, so they provide that advice to the council to say whether or not the building can be whether or not the building meets building code. They cannot provide any development plan consent or development approval. That is controlled by the council. To do this activity, to carry this out, they must be qualified, experienced, and insured. Also, after the process of gaining approval from the council, you have 1 day's notice to the council and authorities for when you are going to be doing excavation. So the council will want to be notified of these stages so they can come out and have a look. So they may come out and have a look to see the trenches have been excavated as per the plans. They'll want to see that the steel is being fixed as per what's being specified in the plans. They'll want to see the wall frame, and they'll want to see the roof frame. Employing a builder, and so all developments will have to have a nominated builder. There is the process also for owner builders. It's a little bit more difficult. You can be an owner builder, however, you still require the services of a site supervisor for that. So that process has been complicated a little in recent years in regards to that. But typically, the vast majority of people building a property will employ a builder to do so, and that builder must be licensed to undertake building works as requirement of the Building Work Contractors Act, and that licence is issued by the Office of Consumer and Business Affairs. Then they can have several types of accreditation. One form of accreditation is as the contractor's licence. So they can contract for certain work only, so they can have a limited licence. To be able to have this accreditation, they have to have a required knowledge of business operations. They have to be able to carry on a small business, must be financially viable, good character, and not an undischarged bankrupt. So that sort of must be financially viable, but an undischarged bankrupt go hand in hand with that. And then to complete the package, if that builder also wants to be able to sign off on the build fully, so not a limited license but an entire license, they also have to have the site supervisor's registration. So that's registered as a building works supervisor. To get that, they need to have experience and knowledge to supervise works, required nominated references, building qualifications, and supervisory experience. Also, as the builder, they will have to have builder's indemnity insurance. So that insurance is taken out by the builder to protect the owner from non-completion of works or non-rectification of faulty works if the contractor becomes becomes bankrupt, dies, or defaults in any other way. So that is there to provide financial protection for the clients. All licensed builders are required to take out indemnity insurance on contracts over $12,000. But as I mentioned before, that may also vary between council jurisdictions. When we go for building rules of consent, we'll also need to pay the Construction Industry Training Board levy, which is 0.25% of the contract value. It must be paid before development approval is granted, and that Construction Industry Training Board levy goes towards things such as the TAFE here and the training of people within construction, but also many other aspects towards the servicing and looking after people who work in construction. To define the relationship or the financial relationship between and the works relationship between the builder and the client, there are various different forms of contracts. For domestic contracts, both the HIA and Master Builders Association have standard form contracts which you can purchase and use for domestic contracts. For commercial contracts, they may vary significantly, but they have to be drawn up in accordance with the Australian Standard 2124 Part A and B. So commercial contracts, because our commercial constructions differ so much from project to project, that is why we may use a standard form contract for commercial, or we may use a standard form contract for the template and modify that to include various different aspects of consideration. So that's the introductory topic to materials and methods. If you have any questions and need any assistance or clarification on various different elements, I can be contacted. Email at michael.jenkins@tafesa.edu.au. But until then, I wish you a good week, and please watch this space for more upcoming videos.